Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. A good topic, let's do it. Paranormal or not, what's the creepiest experience that you have ever had? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. My mom flips houses, kind of like the shows on HGTV. I go with her sometimes to help clean the houses initially because you never know what you'll run into in a dilapidated property. I go to one about a year ago. My mom tells me, once we're inside, that the previous tenant hanged himself in the basement. Great, thanks for the warning, Mom. At one point, I had to go into the basement for some reason. It was unnaturally large for a house in the city and very dark. All of a sudden, the door leading to the upstairs closed, and my flashlight died simultaneously. An absolutely oppressive presence engulfed me at once. It felt like utter madness and despair. I freaked out because I was in total darkness, and this guy's specter was rushing over to greet me and began to scream. My mom rushed down because if her 28-year-old weightlifting son is shrieking, there's a serious problem. I tried to explain what happened and was written off as having an overactive imagination in lieu of the circumstances surrounding the house's vacancy. I know there's a rational explanation for this, but it is what I saw. It was a pitch-black, rural road in Pakistan. The kind of road where there are simply no cars, no buses, no domiciles, no farms, nothing. Absolutely nothing but undeveloped land on both sides of the road. Just open, arid land. What I'm saying is that there's nothing out here. When I look in our car's headlights, I definitely see something moving in the distance. I'm in the passenger seat, and this figure is on my side. And at first, very first, it seems like a large animal, like a cow or buffalo or something, because it walks very not human. As the driver slows down and starts blaring the horn to alert this thing, it turns its head, and it's a very, very frightening old face of a woman with orange ringlets framing her face, and her eyes are really black. But this is not the scariest part. The most frightening aspect, as I could clearly discern, was that her hair did not resemble human hair, and even though she was standing on two legs, her feet were positioned at the bottom. We were completely turned around, backwards. Her feet were backwards. I had a panic attack and passed out in the car. When I was about 14 years old, I worked at a summer camp at our town pool. One morning at camp, I lay on the pool's edge with my legs in the water and my torso on the pavement, relaxing. I started to hear a really distant noise. Not quite annoying exactly, but loud enough and persistent enough to make me wonder where it was coming from. I popped up and looked around to see if I could locate the source of the sound. I was sitting near a fence that was located behind me with the parking lot on the other side of it, and I noticed two guys were in the parking lot by their car with their doors open. I thought maybe they had the radio on, and I could hear it from where I was sitting. No big deal, until it started to get louder. Now I'm starting to freak out. It sounds like mumbled, unintelligible conversation. I keep looking around me, confused and now starting to get scared. I can't locate the sound or the source of it, and it keeps getting louder and louder. The voices in the conversation get clearer. I jump to my feet, still looking around me. Nothing. No one is near me. Where is that coming from? I start walking away from the pool, and all of a sudden, the voices are clear as day, as if there were 4 to 5 people standing in a circle around me, saying, enjoy oranges, ha 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 ha. What? Enjoys oranges, what? At this point, I start crying and running at the same time. As I run, the voices get more mumbled and die down a bit. I ran halfway across the park to the playground and sat on the swings. I waited for the voices to die down completely. Once they vanished, I regained my composure and resumed my day. That was the first time and last time that ever happened to me. That experience deeply affected me. and to this day I'll never know why that happened. Maybe stress? Some sort of schizoaffective episode? Paranormal activity? I don't know. But that's the scariest, most unsettling thing that's ever happened to me. In each case, I've predicted the sudden deaths of 2 different family members the day prior. At the age of 8, I had an overnight stay at my grandmother's house. Her newish husband, not my grandfather, was there, and I had met him previously without issue. When I saw him that day, I remember his face was terrifying to me, and I couldn't look him in the eyes. I refused to stay there and had a full-on child mental breakdown when my mom attempted to leave me, screaming hysterically, saying I was sick, fake retching, and told my mom that he had died in the past tense. She apologized to him, scolded me, and took me home. The next morning we got a call that he died in his sleep from a stroke. I remember my mom screaming as she got the call and then shaking, asking how I knew he was going to die. I had no idea. I just remember thinking I had caused it for a while. The second instance was when I was 12. My great aunt, who lived in Japan, had given my parents some seeds years earlier for some Japanese flower, and they had planted it in our backyard. The flowers had seeds that popped when you lit them with a lighter, so I used to sneak lighters and burn them. I got caught with the lighter, and being a shitty kid, I thought to destroy the plant with the lawnmower to get back at my parents. I mowed over it while cutting the grass, and when my upset mom told me it was a gift from my aunt, I said something along the lines of, "Who cares, she's probably dead already." A few days later, we were told that she died. Later, we found out that she hung herself in her garage as she was dying of colon cancer, had no money, had no immediate family. She died 2 days after my lawn mowing incident. Another thing I just remembered is how shared trauma can affect what 2 people see. I had nightmares, and some daymares too, of some weird thing using my great uncle to come after me with a noose. I'd sometimes swear my great uncle was hanging in a hallway. He committed suicide by hanging, but he was great to me. What happened with my great uncle is that he ran out of money, so his younger brother offered an old, shitty house that had only cold running water and an outhouse as a place to live. Something didn't feel right there. I used to cry when it was time to visit him, and I told my mom something was bad about that place. I had nightmares about it. I think I was just picking up on my great uncle's despair. He lived alone in the middle of nowhere, was in barely surviving mode, and didn't even have anything around him to quiet his mind. If he could have even just been moved to a city where there were people and a library, that may have helped. Either way, just bad feelings all around. And it eventually got to him too. Decades later, when drinking with my little sister, our conversation turned to our youth, and I told her the dream. She claimed the same thing, except that rather than being after her, it was after me. She said he'd hang in her closet and say he was going to hang me. One other weird thing is while playing with the cats by our barn, I suddenly had a bad feeling. I turned around, and there was a rope in the window hanging in the shape of a noose. I freaked out and ran back to the house. Later I did investigate, and then could see it was just a rope hanging in such a way to make it seem like a noose through the window, but from inside the barn, it was just a rope, not wrapped and hanging correctly. We were more affected by his suicide than anyone knew, despite people trying to keep it from us. I was about 10 at my friend's house for the night, and their mom went around the corner to have a drink with the neighbor. It was like 11 o'clock, and I and one of my friends, one of 3, headed out to walk the door. Small neighborhood, so everyone knows each other and all of that. So we're heading around the block chatting and nothing in particular, and here someone coughed behind us. We turned around, and there's this tall man with growing hair behind us, like right behind us. You'd think he was our dad or something. He smiled and was like, "Oh, hello girls, out late are we?" at which point the dog starts barking. We just stare at him, try and shush the dog, apologize, and then take off down the street. He was following us, so at some point he just up and ran, turned the corner, and went bolting inside the house. My friends had one of those glass doors with a sheer curtain, so you could somewhat see through it and somewhat see outside. Anyway, we go inside and explain to our friend's sister, 8 and 12, what happened. They laugh and tell us we're taking the horror movies too seriously. We argue, but a few minutes later, we put on a different movie. A few minutes later, I hear a cough from the window that was slightly open, and I'm bugging out, but no one else heard it. A few minutes later after that, the oldest of our group looks over and is like, "Someone's at the door." So she gets up and goes toward it. But the door starts making noise, like someone's trying to open it. At that point, we're all freaking out. I am the sacrificial lamb. I move the curtain a little and look out to see the man from the walk. We turned off the TV and all the lights and pages, the phone, wireless. The phone makes no noise, which means it's dead and we can't find it. He stays outside and keeps saying, "Girls, open the door," through the window. I and my friend, who walk the dog, end up grabbing kitchen knives and heading out into the backyard, where the fence is part of shared neighbor, where their mom is staying. So I climb the fence and go knock on the door frantically and scare the bejesus out of the woman who opened the door. We explain ourselves and our weaponry, and the neighbor and friend's mom start walking with us back to the house. When we rounded the corner, the man was standing on the front steps trying to open the door. He took off when he saw us, and we called the police to file a report. Nobody slept that night. There's a lot of good examples or stories today. I like the blend between the potential paranormal and just the reality of life, which often is more scarier. So, I don't know if that was a good sentence, but either way, I said it. Hope you guys are having a great day. One night around 5 or so years ago, I had a few friends over to drink at my mom's place. The house was around 110 years old, so we finish up at 2 or 3 and everyone leaves. So I go to bed sufficiently buzzed, but not overly drunk. I must not have slept long before being awoken to seeing my friend Sydney standing at the foot of my bed wearing a red dress. I was pretty confused, and being that I was half awake and kinda drunk, I couldn't be sure what I saw, but I do remember saying, "Sid, what are you doing here still? Just go home. I'm trying to sleep." She just stood there by my bed, not moving and staring at me, and I just put my head on my pillow and went to sleep. I think I brought it up with her the next day, and she said she was never there, and we both thought it was extremely weird, but we agreed I was just drunk. Anyway, fast forward a couple of months, I had to go to pick my sister up from a party at around 2 a.m. I get her, and we drive home, and as we pull up to the driveway, she asks, "Hey, do you have friends over tonight?" "No, why?" I replied. "Well, there's a girl in a red dress in your window. It looked like your friend Sydney." I explained to her what happened a few months prior, and we kind of freaked out a bit. That house had some strange goings-on. When my sister and I were younger, I was around 10 and she was 7-ish, and my mom was driving us home from piano lessons. Things were going normal as per usual. And then we drive by the big cornfield near our house on a quiet street when my mom stops the car in the middle of the road and just looks at the cornfield. Me and my sister are both looking around like, Mom, what? She then proceeds to look terrified, run out of the car, and just freaks us out. It was so confusing. She comes back in totally fine, like nothing had just happened, and drives home. We both brushed it off as something not super important. Fast forward 10 years, and my sister and I drive past that same place again and get that weird memory, like we had forgotten it had ever happened. Anyway, we asked my mom, and she actually thinks we're crazy. But I can't shake the feeling there was a little glitch in the system and something weird happened. It just didn't seem like my mom. I had just moved into my first apartment with a roommate, but the first week he was on vacation, so I was home alone. He was kind of a pothead and had mentioned Feel free to have some if I wanted, including his THC pills. So, being a fan of horror films, I took a pill and turned on the remake of Evil Dead. It was about 1 a.m. at this point, and I began to hear screams and sad moans. I would then pause the movie, thinking maybe it was from that. I'd hear nothing, so I'd press play again only to hear it again. But something sounded weird. Why was it coming from my front door? And the movie had nothing to do visually with that sound. So I paused it and ran to my front door, trying to peek through the eye hole and listen through the crack of the door, but I heard nothing, just silence. I slowly walked back to my couch, and at this point I'm thinking, oh shit, is this all in my head from the THC pill? I turned on the movie again and boom! Again, the sound of crying or just an overall sadness was coming from the hallway. I decide at this point it's in my head and turn up the TV much louder. Again, I keep hearing it. This time I hear a bang like someone punching the wall outside. I paused the movie and ran to the front door. This time I keep hearing it, louder and clear. It sounded like a male crying. All I could think of is if someone got beat up, stabbed, or shot. I wanted to open the door and see, but moving to a big city from a small one and being really high, I got super paranoid and, well, scared. So I just did what I did and tried to make out what I saw, was hearing, or see something through this peephole. Still nothing. And about 10 minutes later, I decided to turn on the movie, and this time just crank it. It also did not have a cell phone at this time, otherwise I would have called the front desk. The next morning I went out thinking, oh god, if there's blood anywhere, I'm going to feel so bad for not trying to help. Anyways, I had told my roommate about this, and he definitely had a laugh. Then one day we get a knock on the door, and there was this kid making the same sounds, trying to get in our apartment once we opened the door. It turns out all those sounds were from the kid who was mentally challenged and had locked himself out of his parents' apartment. I feel terrible, as I normally would have helped, but I'm glad it wasn't someone dying out in the hallway. Mine is currently happening. I live in an apartment complex that is all townhouses, so we all have our own door to the outside. About a month ago, I was home with my baby and niece, and I heard the doorknob jiggle, like someone was seeing if it was locked. I got up and looked out the peephole and window, but didn't see anything. Then about 2 weeks later, I heard the doorknob jiggle again, and someone actually gave it a little push. The deadbolt was locked, and you could see a very small crack where the door was very slightly jarred. Again, I got up and looked out the window again, nothing. About a week ago, someone knocked on the door. I thought it was my boyfriend, otherwise I wouldn't have answered. I answered the door holding my baby, and the man looked a little caught off guard. He asked if my husband was home. Who asks that? Of course I said yes, because I was freaked out and home alone. He said, I'm sorry. I see you're busy with the baby. I just needed a jump. I didn't even have a car outside. I'm pretty sure this is a guy that just moved in a little down the street. He also passed several cars on the walk to my apartment. Last Sunday night, again, home with just the baby, I hear a key go into our lock. I looked at the clock because it was way too early for my mom to come home. The only other person with a key. I again get up and looked out the window but didn't see anyone. So at this point I'm highly paranoid and don't know what to do. There's been no crime committed, so I can't call the police, but I'm pretty sure someone is trying to get into my apartment, and it's freaking me out. There was a girl I worked with that was super weird, like randomly singing weird. She had some kind of infatuation with me. I guess because I drove her to work sometimes, she randomly quit, and I forgot about her. About 2 months later, I start smelling something strange in my apartment. Then it gets worse, to the point it's unbearable. Shortly after, I get a knock on my front door. I open it up, and it's a police officer. He tells me that someone died in the apartment above me and had been rotting for weeks. He wanted to ask me some questions, obviously. Turns out it was that girl. She apparently moved in there within those 2 months. Even worse, they said she put me down as her referral and emergency contact. I had no idea. Even stranger was that I never told her where I lived. Stranger still, a couple of weeks before this, I had a situation where I woke up in the middle of the night. I was completely paralyzed and heard whispering. I felt like I was being held down. After researching it later, I figured it was just sleep paralysis, which I've never experienced. Now I'm not sure it wasn't something related to her dying in the apartment above. Super weird. I'll still never forget that smell.